Jen.
Hey, Kurt.
So we had mentioned in the last video, who's going to heaven?
Yes.
That we would talk about Ezekiel and his temple that he mentions. But before we get there, I think we should talk about Ezekiel altogether.
Yeah.
And there's a little, some people know this. I got to give credit to Matthew Nolan because probably about 6 years ago he did a teaching on this and I was unaware of it. And then it's like everything else. If you Google it, you can find out that there's truth. You can figure out what's what. So the dirty little secret about Ezekiel is it's not in order, right? The chapters are not. Like it starts off with that vision that he has. Some people refer to Ezekiel's wheels within wheels, but that's literally the last thing he sees or records. And we know that because he's super organized and he says, in this year, in this month of this year, and it's the year of. Do you have the chronological order the thing brought up?
I do.
History. Okay. Do you want to just read that paragraph at the beginning of it, talking about the history, so then we're all on the same page?
Sure. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, stopped Egypt's advance into Asia at the Battle of Carchemish in the Jezreel Valley in 605 BC, invaded Judah and secured the alliance of Judah's king Joachim in
Jehoiakim.
in 601 in 601 BC. Nebuchadnezzar attempted to invade Egypt unsuccessfully, causing the Levant nations to change their loyalty back to Egypt. This led to Babylon's first siege of Jerusalem in 597 BC, resulting in the deportation of all the leaders of Judah, including Daniel, Isaiah, and Ezekiel, at age 25. Babylon launched the third and final siege and destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BC. While in Babylonian captivity, Ezekiel wrote these 13 scrolls to the exiled leaders of Judah. And I thought Ezekiel was a tough read. And to know that these chapters could be arranged chronologically, I just thought really, I hope is helpful, but just to keep in mind they're to different leaders that are exiled, I think it's important too, because Yah seems to give his prophets specific instructions. Go speak to this leader, or go speak to this king, or go speak to this nation. And to keep that in mind, I think is really important.
I think the other interesting thing about that, you and I've talked about this off air before, but when people say, well, I have a vision or I have a prophecy or whatever, it's never to the layman. It's always to the leaders, right? Yeah. So when Yahuwah gives a prophet a job or a word to speak from him, go talk to these leaders and tell them this is how they need to.
Yeah.
These people that are claiming to be in charge of whatever, be it clergy or rulers and in charge, they were following them. And we're going to dig into Ezekiel chapter 8. And so like when that says a chapter, so they found these scrolls in jars, and the jars were numbered, right? So
by the people who found them? That makes it even different.
No, actually there was a number on the jar.
Good.
This is the history that I've heard and read somewhere, all right? So they thought that that's the order that they were in, right? Because there are 13 scrolls, right? So scroll number 8, they thought was in the 8th chapter, but that's actually the first chapter, right? And when you go by the hyper organization of Yahuwah saying this year, the 6th year and the 6th month, the 5th day, and then we have that Ezekiel's wheels within wheels, right? And that's listed in the first chapter. That's actually the last scroll. That's the 13th scroll, and that isn't recorded until the 30th year of what? Yeah. Not his life, of their captivity. It says it's not even a scroll number. It just says chapter 1, verse 2 and 3, right?
Yeah.
And then that says the 5th year and the 5th month. That's the designation. And it also refers to, for identification while in storage, refers to Ezekiel in third person. Then you skip down to the 13th scroll, and then it says 1, verse 1 and 4 through 727. The priesthood is judged, and then you'll see that play out. So it says, on the 5th day, this is verse 1, Ezekiel 1, the way it's written currently, on the 5th day of the 4th month, in the 30th year, while I was living among the exiles by the Chebar River, the sky opened up, and I saw visions from Elohim, period. Okay. That's a standalone thought. Now, we go to the current one. It's chapter 2, or I said verse 2, on the 5th day of the month during the 5th year. So it goes from the 30th year to the 5th year of exile of King Jehoiakim. Yahuwah spoke his word to the priest Ezekiel, son of Buzi, in Babylon by the Chebar River. The power of Yahuwah came over Ezekiel. So I think this is making two different statements, right?
Yeah.
The 30th year, this is when that chariot thing shows up with the wheels within the wheels.
Oh.
That's verse 1. Then in the 5th year, this is when Yahuwah takes over and makes Ezekiel a prophet. Is in the 5th year.
Think of this as an end note, right? It's telling you the very end of this happening with this prophet to the very beginning. So here you have this overview looking back. But then the rest of this chapter, I mean, what a puzzle piece. I had read over this bit of information. I didn't realize it was the 30th year and then the 5th year. I just read those numbers like no big deal. But when you see that Ezekiel is puzzle pieced together, oh my goodness, I think that changes almost the context. So it kind of changes how you would even read it. But to keep in mind that it's to certain specific leaders, I think that helps too.
Right, right. And just what a mistake almost to not. It takes us till recently to wait a second. These are date stamped, man. Maybe we should put them in the order that they're date stamped.
Yes, that'd be such a difference. And to realize these are official documents, like he is dating them in the year that he wrote them.
And it's almost like he knew.
Yeah.
He knew we'd do this. So let's just date it. Just put the dates on it because they're gonna mess it up. It's like everything else they do.
And if we read those as separate portions, I think that maybe would help too. Like, okay, he's saying this at this point in time, and then he says this in a different specific time. I don't know. It might be an interesting way to read Ezekiel.
Yeah, I mean, this is so. If we want to use modern context words, we could say Ezekiel begins his ministry on the 5th day of the month during the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiakim, who spoke his words to the priest Ezekiel, son of Buzi, in Babylon by Chebar. The power of Yahuwah came over Ezekiel. Period. End of story. Amen. That's the beginning of his being a prophet.
But think of what Yah gives you there. So much context. You know who it is. You know who he is the son of. You know he is a priest. You know that he's located in this specific place. He's in exile at this time. Like Babylon has already come in and taken these people out. Jerusalem's been destroyed. I mean, putting all those pieces together, that really gives this. Yes.
Right. So
that's super helpful. I'm so grateful that Ezekiel wrote it that way. Oh, and I had honestly just read over those. I'd skimmed that part. I had not even registered that he's telling you when exactly he wrote this chapter. And you're right, the book begins with the 30th year, and then the other chapters are labeled differently.
Right.
It's not all at the same time.
So then when you get to, and we'll put a link to this PDF that's available. And, we discussed maybe going through Ezekiel in its correct order, but, when we get to chapter 40, the way it's in our current scripture, it says something about the abomination. It mentions the abomination and the disgusting things that Israel has done. And based on what we've read so far in all the other prophets, we know Israel's worship of the gods and this, that, and the other thing, but we don't really know how bad it is. and how much offense Yahuwah takes to it. But if this is in the correct order, Ezekiel chapter 8 is the first thing he says, one of the first things he says. Like chapter 1, verse 2 and 3, and then he goes to 8, 1. That's the first scroll they find, and that's in his 6th year of captivity. And then you had brought this up in another video past, is like the thing to keep in mind is this temple and Israel's destroyed, right? They're in captivity. It's completely the siege of Jerusalem, and they've seen everything wiped out, and so they as a people are kind of sad and depressed, right? But Yahuwah's given you this vision while when we get to chapter 40 of the future of the kingdom. Like, dude, this isn't the end of it. This is just and I hate to put it this way, but when you read it and you start to understand, he's talking to the Levitical priesthood. He's talking to the priesthood and the leaders. Like, you're in this position, human beings in Israel, as a result of how your leaders are worshiping. Not necessarily you, but it's going to be restored, but it's going to be way in the future.
Well, and they'd had the hope that because the temple was there, that God was going to defend them. There was no way they could be taken over, right? They have the temple. God is there. And yet he had promised to destroy them. And the encouraging thing about Ezekiel is he does still reassure these people, yes, you're in captivity, but God's still going to gather you back. And there is hope for the future. And yes, it's way far in the future, but there's still, he's faithful to his promises. And again, he's saying, you're my people. When you come back to realize I'm your God, great, we're good. We're going to be reestablished. And I think that's super good.
Right. And then when you lay the groundwork of, okay, the stuff that we've read in the past, and he's admonishing the priests, right? You've trampled down my people. You've stepped on them. You've kept them from knowing me, and you've caused them to, you've led them into sin against me. Like, he doesn't not know that, is what I'm saying. Right. He knows that. Yeah.
The Levites' job was to teach the people, right? They're to teach Torah, and they had not done that. They had looked after their own needs, or everything just run amok so quickly in the nation.
And the other thing too is to consider that these are prophets, right? And we have a tendency to want to say, okay, these prophets, when we read them, are talking about the God man. They try to put the God man into what these prophets are talking about, and it's not there.
Yeah.
And we're trying to say, okay, these prophecies are talking about him. No, they're not. So if we're saying 605 BC, and then a prophecy is made, so he's in captivity in 597, destroyed Jerusalem in 586, and they're taken into captivity. So 586 before Common Era. That's a long time. Yeah. So there's a prophecy made about what's going on 586 years from now, right? At that time, not what's going to happen based on some God man arriving. In fact, that's not even in these scrolls. You've got to make that be in the scrolls. So,
but that one term, Son of Man, is what we get confused about. And when we read in context that it's Ezekiel being referenced as, hey, you son of man, it's hey, you person, hey, you human being, not anything divine. Nothing else is coming to save you. It's that he's speaking to this prophet. God is speaking to Ezekiel specifically. And I came across a Psalms that is very specific about don't look to a person for help. Your salvation is not in a person. It's God Almighty. That's it. He's the only one. And I'm so reassured that again and again through scripture, God's so specific and so consistent.
That comes back to that, what we had learned before. It's like tilting your ear out after you've been swimming.
Yeah.
Let the water drain out, because it's making that noise in your ear. It's like, that's what we got to do with everything we've learned. Just let it.
Yeah.
And then let these words speak to us fresh and new. And so, So yeah, he's gonna talk about the disgusting things you do. Now, without the context, again, Ezekiel chapter 8 is literally the first scroll that they find. State, and here it is in writing.
Yeah.
And this is just like to think that Yahuwah is unorganized and just, you know, on a whim kind of thing. No, he's super organized, and
he knows it all to the cellular level. Of course, he has these details for us, and for us just to put it into context changes things when we have read it before thinking, oh, it's already in order. And then you realize, wait a minute, if I rearrange this, and keep in mind it's to specific leaders that are in exile somewhere else, not where he is. I think that really helps put things in context. That's super important.
And the other part of it is he's given them I like this term, course correct. He's given them an opportunity. Look, you messed up. I'm grossed out by you. I'm gonna send my prophet to tell you and give you a chance to correct.
Yes.
They just don't, but
And isn't that the role of the prophet every time? It doesn't matter if it's Isaiah or Ezra or who it is. It's God speaking to his people or to his leaders or to a specific audience. Hey, here's my promise. My covenant I've kept. It's still valid. Are you ready to enter back into that yet?
right. And then so as Israel, all these years later, and centuries and thousands of years, and a lot of dead people, a lot of wars, and a lot of stuff, like all of a sudden, wait a second, these are written down to specific. Now we can all read, all of us, we can find this stuff is available.
Yeah.
And now we make the decision, wait a second, was this written to, okay, if I'm Israel, this was written to me. And now I don't need to wait for a priest to tell me what it says. I can read it myself and I can make the decision. I'm going to do the course correction now for my own life, right? So
yeah. If you dare to do your own homework, you have all this information available. How awesome is that?
Right. So I guess there's a phrase I think it's in the Psalms where it says, you were born for a time such as this. And I'm so happy that I was born now that I don't have to rely on somebody else to give me the information. It's right here. Yeah. It's all right here.
If you dare to read it.
So we're going to start off with Ezekiel chapter 8, and I promise we will get to the temple, but it's really a tough read without he keeps making a mention of the disgusting things you do.
Yeah.
And I don't think it fully lands until you understand what he's disgusted by. So
it just gives context. You need to know where you're at, right? Just like you're not following a map, just not knowing where you are. You got to know where you're at.
Right. So we're going to do Ezekiel 8, verse 1, chapter 8, verse 1, this is actually this is the first scroll. Okay. And it starts off on the 5th day of the 6th month in the 6th year. I was sitting in my home. Judah's leaders were sitting in front of me. The power of Adonai Yahuwah came over me. As I looked, I saw something that looked like a human from the waist down. So this is picture. He's sitting in his home. He's got the leaders of Judah sitting in front of him. Maybe they're just having a gathering, sharing a cup of tea or a beer around together. And then all of a sudden, he sees these people for who they are. That's what is about to happen. As I looked, I saw something that looked like a human. From the waist down, its body looked like fire, and from the waist up, its body looked like glowing metal. It stretched out what looked like a hand and grabbed me by the hair on my head. In these visions from Elohim, the Ruach carried me between heaven and earth. He took me to Jerusalem, to the entrance to the north gate of the inner court of the temple. That was where an idol that stirs up God's anger was located. There I saw the glory of Israel's Elohim, as I did in the vision that I saw in the valley. Elohim said to me, Son of man, look towards the north. So I looked toward the north, And there, in the entrance to the north gate, beside the altar, I saw the idol that stirs up God's anger. He asked me, Son of man, do you see what the people of Israel are doing? The people of Israel are doing very disgusting things here, things that will force me to go away from my holy place. But you will see even more disgusting things. Then he took me to the entrance of the courtyard. As I looked, I saw a hole in the wall. He said to me, Son of man, dig through the wall. So I dug through the wall, and I saw a door. And he said to me, Go in and see the wicked, disgusting things that the people of Israel are doing. So I went in and looked. I saw that the walls were covered with drawings of every kind of crawling creature, every kind of disgusting animal, all of the idols in the nations of Israel, in the nation of Israel. In front of these drawings stood 70 of Israel's leader, Jazaniah, son of Shaphan, was standing with the leaders. Each of them was holding an incense burner in his hand, and a cloud of incense went up. Elohim asked me, Son of man, do you see what the leaders of the nations of Israel are doing in secret? Each of them is in the room where his God is. And each of them is thinking, Yahuwah doesn't see me. Yahuwah has abandoned this land. I'm sorry, I'll let you take over there, but I just want to make the point. It's just like, as a parent, I've experienced my children throwing tantrums before. I'm sure you have too, and we all have. And this just sounds like children throwing tantrums, for the punishment that Yahuwah's dished out. But he warns you that he's going to have to do this because it's built into the fabric of the universe from the moment he created it. Like, as soon as my people decide to start worshiping other gods, but they're saying, he's abandoned us, he's gone, he doesn't see us, so let's go be naughty now. Let's go do what we're not supposed to do because he ain't here.
Mm-hmm. And they think they get away with it, right? It's just so natural. Think, oh, it doesn't matter. Let's start at verse 13. And he said to me, Now you will see yet again great abominations that they do. He then brought me to the entrance of the gate of the temple of Yahweh that is to the north, and behold, there were women sitting, causing Tammuz to cry. And he said to me, Do you see, Son of Man? Now you will see yet again even greater abominations than these.
So that's a weird. That's so. It says in 14. It says women were sitting there and crying for the god Tammuz. Does it say? So this thing
causing Tammuz to cry. So I don't know.
So weeping for Tammuz was a thing that was done every year, and it still is, but you're unaware of it. This word Ash Wednesday that is celebrated, where they put a T, they put a cross on you. That's not a cross. It's Tammuz. It's the symbol of Tammuz. And then they do 40 days of weeping for Tammuz, which is also 40 days of Lent.
Yeah.
Right? Tammuz is the son of Semiramis and Nimrod. Right? So I'll just give a brief history before going for it. People can look this up. You should look it up. Don't just take anything I say. But
right.
So Semiramis was originally married to a person named Cush. Right? Cush was her husband and the father of Nimrod. She divorces Cush, leaves him, and marries her son. Right? It's her stepson. And now, so she is now the wife of Nimrod. They have a son named Tammuz. Right? Nimrod is decapitated by Esau. Right? He's the emperor of the known world, the most powerful human at that time. In order to maintain her power, Semiramis convinces everybody that Tammuz is the reincarnation of Nimrod. So she marries her son. So she left her husband to marry his son. Then her husband dies, and she marries her other son. And this is why she is referred to as the whore of Babylon, the queen of heaven. All the names you want to associate it. Her name is also Ishtar or Easter. This is where these holidays come from. So 40 days of weeping Tammuz. Tammuz, at 40 years old, was gored by a wild boar and killed. So in reverence of Tammuz, you eat a pig on Easter Sunday. Right? So, and he says, Yahuwah says what? He brought me to the entrance to the north gate of Yahuwah's temple. Women were sitting there and crying for the god Tammuz. And then he says, Son of man, do you see this? You will see even more disgusting things than these. He's referring to that as a disgusting thing. And yet, every single year, there's 40 days of Lent. There's 40 days of weeping for Tammuz, and you don't even know you're doing it. And this is the creator of the universe, our God, saying it's a disgusting thing.
It is.
Question everything we do, man. If it's not Yahuwah's 7 holy days, it's not authorized.
Everything else is garbage. Then he brought me to the inner courtyard of the temple of Yahweh, and behold, at the entrance of the sanctuary of Yahweh, between the entrance hall and the altar, were some 25 men with their backs to the sanctuary of Yahweh, with their faces turned eastward. They were bowing eastward to the sun. He said to me, Do you see, Son of Man? Were there other sins too trivial for the house of Judah that they had to commit, the abominations that they have committed here? For they have filled the land with injustice, and yet they return to anger me in my own house. For here they are sending their foul odor into their nose. I too will react with wrath. My eye will not spare, and I will not have compassion. Though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, I will not hearken to them.
So he changed his mind? So if we're doing the things that he finds disgusting, and you can find the names of all these gods on the modern Christian church God and all the other gods that are worshipped all over, if it's not exactly the way he says to worship him, you're worshiping him the way he doesn't want to be worshipped, man.
Yeah, it's so wrong.
We read that in Jubilee 6 last time, where Noah is saying that you will, if you don't follow this calendar exactly the way I'm laying it out right now, then you will, or Moshe is saying this, that you will worship Yahuwah on a pagan holiday.
Yeah.
Right? And we have our end of counting is this week, right?
Yeah. Shavuot.
We're 47, day 47 right now, right?
Yes.
So 3 more days, and that'll put us on. We got the tomorrow after the Shabbat, day 50 is coming up. It'll be the 2nd of June, which, this is the first year I've done it correctly. And then what are we gonna do on Shavuot? I'm throwing a party, dude.
Yes, time to celebrate for sure. You've been counting 50 days to this point.
Right. And then for the first time that I can remember, we will be doing it's a celebration of a double nature. That's what Moshe said. A double nature of what? Remembering Noah and his family getting off the ark, building that altar, and creating a savory flavor for Yahuwah to smell. And
they saw the benefit of being in covenant. God had promised them, I'll save you. Look, you're in the ark. You built it just like you were told to. And then he's out of the ark. Like they survived the flood. What an awesome promise that they got to see with their own eyes. And then at Mount Sinai, it's also Yah giving his covenant to his people. And Moses up there receiving those tablets and coming down and telling the people, and they entered into the covenant. And that's what we're celebrating, is that Yah has a covenant that he's faithful to, and that we're asking to be his people. We want to be in his covenant too.
And so these things that we do in our system of worship that aren't his, I think it's important to put this. He calls it an abomination in that version. In my version, he calls it disgusting. It's like eating your own vomit. Like, why
do that? Gross.
And so to say, no, it's God knows my heart. Yeah, he does. You're not interested in doing what he says to do.
Yeah. That's a
And,
big distinction.
yeah. And how can you know his heart if you're not interested in what he says to do?
He's given clear instructions. It's simple. It really is. It's doable. And it's encouraging to know that again and again through all of his prophets, his words have been pretty much the same. You can be my people. You just have to turn from your disgusting stuff and return to his ways. It's absolutely possible.
Great. So we're going to get into I feel like we should read Ezekiel in its correct order. What do you think?
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, I can't wait for Shavuot this year.
Yeah.
And we're going to party and celebrate and have a good time. Imagine being on that ark for all that time. Like it's a year before he can even set foot off of that thing.
Right?
With all those animals, it can't be pleasant smelling. It's got to be gross.
I don't know. After a whole year. Got to start to wonder.
And then well, I wonder if the water outside was fresh or was it salt? Like, could they just dip a bucket and drink it?
The water's still receded, so I don't know. Like you have dry land again. So maybe you have normal streams and lakes and things like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, that's it for now.